and or their, you have a question already? Oh, okay. You're anticipating. Oh, thank you, Doug. So I can't believe I have been here in February. It's going to be 7 years now since I've been in Nevada. A long time. So a lot of these issues that you're going to hear me talk about today have been around for a long time. So when you brought up the 100-year mark, I won't be there for that. I'm just letting you know, Willie. All right. So I think one of the agenda topics that came from you all that Chris presented to me was kind of talking about our monuments and wilderness areas. These areas on the slide here fit under what the Bureau calls our National Conservation Lands, or NCL. In addition to our monuments, wilderness, we also have historic trails, wild and scenic rivers that kind of fit underneath this program. But in Nevada, as you can see here, we have 2 national monuments. National monuments are created through presidential proclamation through the Antiquities Act. National conservation areas are created through Congress's process to develop these national conservation. So people ask, what's the difference between a monument and a conservation area? It just depends on how it was created. But the reason why you have them is to protect some resource, whether it's archaeological, biological, tribal interests. So all of those fit, what we have here in Nevada kind of fit those categories. So basically within the past 2 years, we had our basin and range out of the Ely office, Caliente area, created 704,000 acres. Had the Gold Butte National Monument created last year, 300,000 acres. And of course, our national conservation areas have been around a while: Red Rock Canyon, Sloan Canyon, and the Black Rock High Rock Canyon Immigrant Trails. We have 46 wilderness areas in Nevada, totaling 2 million acres. We have 60 wilderness study areas, encompassing about 2.5 million acres. So wilderness study areas have been around since 80s and 90s. Only Congress has the ability to either create wilderness out of them or to wipe them off the books. So the Bureau of Land Management made recommendations back in the 80s and 90s when we did inventories, whether an area met the idea for being wilderness or not, and they've been sitting there. So until Congress acts, and we'll talk about it, Congress has acted on a few of them, but until Congress acts, the agencies still manage our wilderness study areas as wilderness in order not to preclude Congress from the ability of making a determination somewhere down the road whether it should become wilderness or drop off the books. So, so you kind of see what we have right here. And some of the land bills, Nevada's notorious for land bills. We've had a lot of land bills. I think those who have been around a while know that when we have a land bill, typically part of the negotiation is to make a wilderness study area a wilderness area. You'll see that. And the Pershing County land bill is no different. So, and so just to go, Secretary Zinke presented the President a report on the national monuments that he reviewed. The 2 here in Nevada, Basin Range and Gold Butte, are in that report. And we're just waiting for the President now. You know, those were recommendations the Secretary made to the President. We're waiting for the President to make a final determination on to act on those recommendations or not act on the recommendations. Probably within the past few weeks, you've all seen where the President went to Utah and did follow up on the actions, on the recommendations on the Secretary for the Grand Staircase Escalante, which has been around for 20 years, as well as the recently created Bears Ears National Monument. And so, so he has acted on at least 2 of them, but the rest of those, we haven't heard anything yet. And I believe the report is in your packet. Is that correct, Chris? It'll be on your thumb drive. So you can kind of go in there and see what was recommended. I do know for the Gold Butte, it was recommended that the size be such that it protects the biological, the archaeological, and the tribal resources. That's all it kind of said. Didn't give any recommendation on particular acreage or anything like that as far as shrinking. So, and I don't believe there was anything on basin and range. Okay, one of the big workloads that we had last year is we had a lands and realty and special legislation program review completed last year. And we did this review because we were starting to get some feedback from our partners and some internal feedback that we could do a better job with how we process our lands and realty workload. We were starting to see turnover. We talked a little bit about turnover here earlier with John. We're starting to see turnover in both our special legislation program and our lands and realty program. And we felt this was a good time to kind of address what are our needs with these programs as we move forward. I'm going to go over a few of the kind of the outcomes of that report. Basically, the Bureau had internal employees from across the country, including our Washington office folks, conduct this review, and that team interviewed both internal staff and managers, as well as our external users who are associated with both the special legislation program and the lands and realty program. And as a result of that report, we've drafted what we call an action plan, or how we're going to implement the items that were brought forward in that report. And we're still working through those action plans for both of those programs. But let me just go through some of the what we found out. In the lands and realty review, there were kind of 3 buckets that we saw, themes of things that kind of came out of the buckets. The first one here, the regulatory and legal compliance area. And you can see the bullets in there that came out of that review. The areas that we needed to address and where we could do some improvement. I'm not going to go in depth on all of them, but suffice to say, for rentals, processes, we could definitely do a better job internally, establishing clear roles and responsibilities on how we charge and collect rents. We were very inconsistent. And when we're inconsistent, it kind of creates chaos not only internally, but also externally when we deal with our publics. Pre-application meetings. Some of our offices were doing pre-application meetings with project proponents when they would come in and want to do a right-of-way, like a power line or a transmission line or a pipeline, whatever. Some of our offices weren't doing that. But we have found when we did pre-application meetings, and the regulations say, to consider a pre-application meeting with the proponent. I think, as a result of this review, we'll probably make it a little stronger, maybe make it mandatory, because what we found is when we do these pre-application meetings with proponent, we're just that much more efficient with how we process the product at the end of the day, right? And so we're trying to really increase our efficiency. Compliance inspections, again, with the turnover and the change of staff and the new folks we have coming on board, whether managers or staff, we just haven't been able to do that at the level that we should be. And compliance is important to make sure that people are following the rules that were agreed to, what was analyzed, and just to make sure that we're not going to create any problems, from other folks who might be watching to see how we do business. And customer service was a big one for us that we heard. A requirement in the program is that when we receive an application, we call it the 29-day letter. Within 29 days, we get back with the applicant, letting them know the time frame it's going to take to process their project that they came in the door with. Sometimes that 29 letter will just say, we've received it, it's a big project, we're going to meet again and figure out what that timeline is. Some of them are small, and we can kind of give them feedback. But that was one of the areas that we weren't doing a very good job. So the proponents were left wondering, I have not heard from the local office, so what's going on with my project? And so we're definitely going to be making sure that we do a much better job with that. The fiscal issues, of course, a biggie. Budgets, which cost recovery, I'll talk about that in a second. Bonding, airport lease rentals, those were some of the areas that were kind of pointed in Nevada's review that we need to do a better job with. Budgets, as you know, aren't going to be increasing, and so we're obviously looking for ways how we can leverage our funds better, stretch our dollars, our program dollars that we get from Congress. And the cost recovery program has been around for the Bureau for a long time. And what it basically is typically if a project is going to take more than 50 hours of an office to process, we can go ahead and set up a cost recovery account with the proponents. And that allows us, one, it gives the proponent, okay, BLM is serious, they're going to process my project, because the proponent's going to provide money to help with offset the cost associated with processing the right-of-way or permit renewal or whatever. Again, we've been inconsistent on how we collect or even go about doing a cost recovery. And so we're going to do a much better job of that. We have to do a much better job of that. And really, it's just the fair cost associated to process it, from staff to manager review time. really at the state office at my level, we also get involved in some of those reviews. We've never really been putting our time into that. I think we've really wanted to minimize the cost associated with that to the project proponents, keep it more at the field level, and that's where most of the work is going to be done. But I suspect we'll have that conversation about should we be charging at the state level for some of these types of projects. And I'll talk about kind of where we're going to end up here shortly. But anyway, so cost recovery, a big way for us to increase our budgets. So we'll be looking at that. And then what I call it the workload and workforce management. Case file processing, inconsistent on best in how we do our management of our case files. If you're familiar with the Lands and Realty Review, it's probably one of the most intense paper-driven programs we have in the Bureau. When you look at the file folders associated with a right-of-way or permits, they're thick. There is a lot of documents in there. A lot of those documents are legally required documents. They're important that we keep those current, keep them organized, because if we have to go back and review, if we're challenged, we can find things quickly and get responses better. We're going to be working on that. NEPA analysis, we talked about 3355. I'll drop into that a little bit more later here, but we need to make sure in NEPA analysis we're analyzing what we need to really analyze and really not let it kind of creep out too big. And that was one of the feedbacks that we got, and so we're going to look at that and try to provide some better direction on what NEPA analysis for our Lands and Realty program should look like. Staffing, and I'll just call it training and staffing for managers. So we have a lot of turnover in Nevada. And I wouldn't say Nevada, I'm going to talk about some examples of what we're doing to try to improve that turnover. Other states I'm hearing it is also a challenge. I think it's a challenge typically in our smaller communities. And I think there's a variety of reasons why it's a challenge, personal reasons, whatever. But regardless, we do have turnover both in staff and managers. As a result of that staff and managers, I think that's one of the reasons we were seeing inconsistencies on how we do work. Because our new folks, both staff and managers, didn't really know what we need to be doing in the Lands and Realty program. And they would have to try to learn it basically day by day when they're sitting in the office, maybe reach out to someone who has some experience. But definitely that's been a big issue. We definitely know in this program it's very important. We've already been talking to our managers here that we need to be sending staff to training. We do have a good training program for the Lands and Realty that's based out of our national training center in Phoenix. And since this report was done, we've been hiring a lot of realty specialists in our office. A lot of these realty specialists are brand new into the program. So they're basically starting with some of the basic training. But we've already made that effort to start getting both staff and managers training. It's important for us. We will continue to do that. Special legislation program review, the other part of the program review we did last year. We really got a lot of kudos from both internally and externally on this program. No big surprise, this program has been around for a while. It's also had several reviews from Government Accounting Office and others over the past few years. We've been making changes to the program as a result of those reviews. Again, we had some turnover in staff. We constantly hear from our externals, are we managing the program, our administrative costs to manage this program at the smallest they can be? And we give presentations regularly to our folks that are involved with us. But it's still there. We know in the back of the mind, it's kind of like we need to take a look and make sure our administrative costs are as tight as they can be so that we can provide as much money to the projects that the dollars from the sales of the land in Clark County go to do wonderful things. By the way, the special legislation program has been almost like $3.5 billion as a result of selling the land in southern Nevada that have gone back out to Nevada, not only Clark County, but outside of Clark County. It's really been a very big success story in my opinion. It's also, and we have a big pot of money in it. We have a 10-year plan on how to spend that pot of money, but it's also one, when every new administration comes in, they look at that pot of money and they want it. And we're constantly having to beat them back and say we have a plan for that money and we have to share that money. And this administration is no different. They're still looking at it. I don't think we've heard the final outcome. Matter of fact, around 17 projects that we want to get approved. This is the first round that the new secretary is going to see, and I think we're going to learn a lot about what he likes and doesn't like about the program. But as a result, I mean, I think this program review showed that, you know, we do have turnover in staff. This is a good time to look at that staffing level. and to look at the organizational structure. We got some feedback, where is the best place for this program to be put in order to maintain its autonomy and do the work it needs to be do. We're going to be looking at that and make an evaluation if we're going to make any changes, no changes, but it was something that came out. We need to address that. We've really done a good job with kind of training people who are interested in the program, new people coming in, either as partner working group members, which represent the county, the state, and other federal agencies, as well as the executive committee, which John is a member of the executive committee, and the other federal agencies. We're providing training so that when we have turnover there, people are engaged and know what they need to do with this program. At the ground level, where the folks are helping us develop projects that we want to fund, you know, we provide training to them also so they know how the program works and how you submit projects. We've really done a good job there. Again, the biggest concern really with this is, again, with the turnover, how do we ensure that consistency and the transfer of knowledge to the people that will be coming into the program? So that was one of the big areas there. Records management, another one, is kind of the paperwork. It's the less glorious part of the jobs of every job, but we need to do a good job following our protocols, our rules, our policies, as far as properly managing our records and putting them in the right spot. So basically, that's kind of what happened last year. So the next steps is we have developed action plans for both programs, draft action plans. We're in the process now of working with our offices to further refine those action plans. And hopefully by mid-March, we have those action plans finalized so that we can begin implementing the other phases of the issues that came out of this program and take the steps to make both programs better. All right. Let me follow up on a few more things on horses. Next slide. So for those of you unfamiliar, how many people are, and it's okay to raise your hand on this one, are unfamiliar with the Bureau's Wild Horse and Burro program? It's okay. If you don't know that, that's okay. Okay, I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights then. So nationwide, we have 177 herd management areas in 10 western states. You heard John talk about herd areas, the difference between a herd management area and a herd area. Herd management areas is where we've done our land use planning and RMPs, which said this is the boundary that we're going to manage for horses in. The herd areas are the areas that we said because of lack of water, lack of forage, but we know there was horses on there. We're going to try to get those areas to zero and focus our management in the herd management areas. So two different terminologies. That's why you're going to hear both of them, because we still have plenty of horses in herd areas that we're still trying to get to zero. And those 177 herd management areas encompass about 31.6 million acres of public and private ground. And of that 31.6 million acres, 27 million acres of it is on BLM land or on the maps there. Okay, so just a few numbers. John presented kind of the first of 3 bullets there for sure. As a reminder, nationally, our appropriate management level, or AML as we call it, we should have about 26,715 animals. As of March 2017, so almost a year ago, our population was 72,674 animals. In Nevada, our AML, or appropriate management level, is 12,800 animals. And as of March last year, we have almost 38,000 animals. So this spring, when you get your foal, and by the summertime, our numbers will be higher. Also, we have 45,500 animals in holding facilities, whether it's corrals or pastures or eco-sanctuaries. And you can see the cost to the Bureau for where you put those animals. A lot of those are contracts that we have. This area takes up the biggest portion of our budget. So our budget's in that $75 million range, and having animals in holding facilities is almost a $50 million cost to the Bureau for that. We were able to either adopt or sell 4,000 animals last year. It is one of our tools, to kind of help reduce animals on the range. You can see the numbers there that were adopted versus sold. And we had 4,200 animals actually gathered last year. If there's a good news in this, 17 or 18 now and 19, our target for removal on our landscape is up to 7,000 animals. So I'll take that as a little victory, because we've been hovering around that 3,000 to 4,000 the past couple of 2 or 3 years. Part of the reason why we've been down at that low level is we were renewing our long-term contracts on corrals, and we kind of went through that process. We lost a few of our contracts, we gained a few, and so the numbers kind of are allowing us to get up to like 7,000 animals. To put our number of animals in perspective, last July, Government Accounting Office released a report on U.S. horse populations, and on tribal lands, there's over 90,000 horses on tribal lands in the United States. So, we're a little lower than them. Okay, so some of the issues, some of the things that we're trying to do, as I mentioned, so controlling herd population on our public lands, we can do that either through removals, or we can do that through, vaccines. Right now, our vaccine really is a 1-year vaccine that we have. And so the cost when you try to dart an animal, it's costly, right? I mean, to try to go back every year, just not really productive and cost effective at this point. So as a result of, and so like it says right there in the NAS, National Academy of Science report that was released in 2013, it said the Bureau, there is no highly effective and easy delivered and affordable fertility control method right now. So the effects of having too many horses on our public lands, obviously we're seeing deteriorated rangeland conditions. Nevada just finished 5 years of a drought here, so there was definitely impacts, particularly to water sources, resources, and our rangelands. The health of the horses, we've definitely been seeing some areas where horse health issue has become a big challenge for us. We've got animals moving out of HMAs where there's no water, no food, moving outside of those, either out to the HAs, onto private ground, causing us other challenges there. So when we look at our gathers and how we decide what we're going to gather, a lot of it is dependent on, do we have rangeland health issues going on that need to be addressed, particularly with our wildfires, and we're going to go back in and reseed an area. If we have too many horses, do we want to try to gather in there to try to minimize the impact of having too many horses on an investment that we're going to put in the landscape to try to improve rangeland health? And a big one is threat to public life and safety, particularly on roads. We're looking at gathers there, and of course horses entering private ground. So here's some of the good things. There are 21 research projects going on right now that the Bureau has initiated to address a lot of things. One of them is definitely looking at a longer lasting fertility control mechanism. Hopefully something good will come out of that we can definitely apply and help control population growth. We are finding that when we adopt horses, trained horses are pretty much 100% adopted. So whether it's through the prisons or through the Mustang Heritage Foundation, a trained horse gets adopted, or a trained burro gets adopted, just like that. So the Bureau is definitely looking at expanding, particularly in the prison areas, more prisons across the country that want some horses that they can train, and then hopefully we can get more adoptions that way. And then just a quick slide, you can take a look at this, not going to go into it too much, but just some of the media stuff that happened in Nevada last year. You guys can kind of look at your own leisure. But we definitely got a lot of stuff, a lot of interest in our prison training effort and adoption process, so you'll see a lot of that on there. All right. So a couple other things I think that you guys brought up through Chris that you wanted to know about, and these are several bills, 3 bills right now that are in different processes of being worked upon, right? It's different stages. So HR 1349 is to amend the Wilderness Act to ensure the use of bicycles, wheelchairs, strollers, game carts is not prohibited in wilderness areas. And as you can see there, the bill has not cleared the House or the Senate, but so I think someone was asking where that was at. So there's also the Pershing County Land Bill. That bill directs the Department of the Interior to conduct sales or exchanges of eligible lands in Pershing County, Nevada, identified as the checkerboard lands. The Interior and the county shall jointly select which parcels are eligible for sale or to be exchanged. The bill designates special specified federal land in Nevada as components of the National Wilderness Preservation System. So that first slide where I said we had WSAs and wilderness, some of those WSAs would be likely converted into wilderness as part of this land bill if it passes. And then Senate Bill 1046, the Eastern Nevada Economic Land and Management Improvement Act. Basically, this bill amends the Lincoln County Act of 2000 to require implementation of a multi-species habitat conservation plan in Lincoln County, Nevada. The bill requires cooperative agreements between the BLM and Lincoln County for certain county-provided law enforcement and planning-related activities approved by the Department of the Interior. And basically, it allowed the proceeds of the sales to be returned to the county to be used for economic development. So a hearing is scheduled for that one in February. And then talk about this here quickly. And I know Matt Magaletti will be in with the Sage Grouse subgroup tomorrow afternoon, talking a little bit more. But just to make everyone aware of this, we've been waiting for this tool for over a year now. As a result of the transition in the administration, we've been waiting for the go-ahead to move forward. And what this new effort is, that what we're calling our programmatic treatment PISs, is to allow us in the Great Basin states, Utah, Idaho, Oregon, Nevada, and Northeast California, to be able to quickly do local, whether it's a CX or a small EA at the end of the day, to do more treatments on the ground. So whether it's fuels treatments, so one of these PISs is focused on fuels treatments to try to prevent wildfire, minimize the size of wildfire, and the other one is vegetation management. Cutting down juniper trees, dealing with invasive species, protecting riparian areas, managing riparian areas. And all those tools are roughly the same for both of those programmatic EISs. So they're basically going to go on the same track here to try to get them completed. And we have scoping meetings, which are going to be held in Nevada, and those are also in your packet, I understand. But we do know we're going to be in Reno, we're going to be in Elko, and we're going to be in Ely. The end of January, early February timeframe is those areas, not to mention other places in those other states. So the goal was locally at our field level, a workload capacity issue, trying to get all this NEPA done in order for us to do stuff on the ground. Congressman Amade and others have really been pushing the BLM. BLM, you're getting money to do sage grouse work. What are you doing on the ground? What we're explaining to him is that we already have some NEPA done on what we call on the shelf, ready to go. The plans require us to treat roughly 1 million to 1.23 million acres every year in order to meet the commitments in our sage grouse plan. We're in that 400,000 acre range right now. So the goal of these programmatic documents is to allow NEPA to be done so that at the ground level we can actually get more done on the ground quickly, but it will require that we do need to do some planning in order to try to reach that 1 million mark of acres treated every year. So that's what this is designed to do. Hopefully some of you guys can make these scoping meetings so you can understand what is going on. And I just want to make sure Matt will talk about this tomorrow for the rest of you. So we have this effort going on, and at the same time we're looking at what we're calling Secretary Order 3353, which is Secretary Zinke's request of the governor's offices. What are you going to do with, with the new sage grouse plan? How are we going to amend our current sage grouse plan to address some of the issues that the governor's staffs across the West still have? That planning effort is also going on at the same time. So I didn't want to confuse anybody because I didn't want people to think, well, what is this versus that effort? Two different efforts as far as what we're trying to accomplish. Is that it? Okay, so let me go back to Secretary Order 3355. Can we get to 12 months, 150 pages? We're going to try, and as we said earlier, we know we can do a better job with NEPA. I think a lot of the NEPA we do today is a result of a lot of lawsuits that the Bureau has had over the course of the year and how we've adopted to those lawsuits. And so I think we've made some robust documents in order to try to protect ourselves from lawsuits. It's going to be interesting because the sage grouse plan that took almost 3 years to complete, I heard a lot in public meetings, you're going too fast. 3 years, we're going too fast. Now we're going to try to do this in 1 year and 150 pages. And I don't know how people are going to respond to that. Some will probably say we're going too fast. Some will probably say it's about time. I think the question is it a speed thing or is it a quality document at the end of the day? And I think at the end of the day, we want to make sure we have a quality document, because if we get challenged and we lose, who wins at the end of the day on that process, right? So I think that's the balance that the Bureau is going to try to do right now, is try to meet the intent of the 1 year, 150 pages, and yet still provide a well-written document that analyzes what it needs to analyze and can be legally defensible, and try to get rid of the stuff that doesn't need to be analyzed. And I think that's going to require a different mindset for staff, for contractors that we typically use, particularly for these larger EISs, and our solicitors when they review these documents at the end. We put together a list in Nevada of what we consider our big NEPA documents. Dave Pritchard there can talk about that, because he did talk to all the districts. I think, was it 13? Does that sound about right? So between mining EISs, these sage routes plans, RMPs, national monument plans, which now that's been changed a little bit. We have a lot on our plate to try to meet that 1 year, 150 page expectation of Secretarial Order 3355. The other question came up, turnover and how best to maintain employees. Good question, tough question. What we're trying to do, and still get the work done that we need to get done, right? That's still a big priority. So, a couple of examples that we've done. In Nevada, we created a livestock grazing permit renewal team, sits in Reno. One of the reasons why we did that was because when we had program reviews, including a range program review during our drought time, there was a lot of turnover in the range cons in the different offices. And one of the reasons was they wanted to go to a bigger community. So in Nevada, where was our biggest communities, Las Vegas and Reno, we created the team in Reno with the goal of hopefully having some stability, and at the same time still be able to do permit renewals to help out the state. So that was one effort. Another effort we did, again, because the field units were, with turnover and the other existing workloads they had, whether it was working on a wild horse gatherer, a mining EIS, a geothermal or oil and gas NEPA document, in order to meet the intent of the Sage Grouse Plan of trying to treat 1 million acres every year, we created 2 ID teams, what we're calling our NEPA teams, one in Boise and one in Reno, to help field capacity, develop more NEPA so that we can get things done on the ground. So basically to help assist. And so those were a couple of areas that we felt these communities were good communities people would like to live and stay in, and help us meet our workload, because our workload was not changing. The expectations from Congress and the dollars they gave us is that we still get these things done, and we need to figure out how best to do that. That's just one tool. How you keep people at the local offices is, so one of the things that we're doing in my division, the resources division, now that we're in the new year, is I told my staff, we're gonna create a orientation package to all 930 programs, horse program, wildlife program, recreation program, realty program, so that if a new manager comes into Battle Mountain, new staff comes into Elko, they already know what they need to know about these programs, and they're not looking around trying to figure it out. We're going to try to create this orientation package so it's helpful for everyone, because we just see the turnover regularly, and it just feels like you have to re-educate regularly. Cultural program is a prime example. Very complex program, laws, rules associated with that. We find that we're constantly training regularly and constantly reminding. We're going to try to create this orientation package so that hopefully people, when they come into the offices, can pick that up and understand what they need to do and not feel like they're overwhelmed, don't know what they're going to do, and maybe keep them from looking somewhere else to try to go with their job. So that's what we're committed to doing. So with that, I think I am done. I'm open to questions. Willie.
Raul, Secretarial Order 3353, we provided some comments to the Bureau. Kind of wondering where that stands, and you may or may not know. And the second part to that question, do you anticipate any decisions made on those recommendations could impact your effort at programmatic EIS for fuel breaks and veg management?
So your comments, there was a lot of comments provided to the Secretary on that. The result of those comments are, we held the scoping meetings last fall. We got feedback. We got the governor's comments. We should be having a scoping report based on those comments like any day now from Washington, which will then direct us where we need to focus these plan amendments on for sage grouse. Based on what I know, it's looking like it's going to be very targeted on addressing a few things throughout most of the western states. So you had some western states said plan is good, we don't want to mess with it. You had some western states said plan is bad, we need to fix it. As a result of those scoping, I think we're very targeted on a few areas. So mitigation will be one of the areas that's likely going to change. SFAs, sage grouse focal areas that are likely going to change. And then there are other unique things in each one of the different states. So we're going to move away from a regional kind of a planning approach to a statewide approach. In Nevada, we'll still work with California. We'll have one plan that addresses the Nevada-California piece of it. So that's kind of where we're going, and that's how we're going to take into account some of the information that we got from the scoping reports. That piece is a planning piece. This programmatic piece is an implementation piece. And there was nothing that came up that said we don't want to do anything on this implementation end. Again, it just fits under Secretary 3355. Can we do it in a year? That clock started right before Christmas, by the way. And can we keep it at 150 pages? Yeah. So it shouldn't touch the implementation piece.
As a former BLM employee, I'm just curious as to how do you think you can manage the workload combined with the new call for 1 year of NEPA, because most of the people writing NEPA documents are also have to be out in the field, they have to be meeting with range, with cattle ranchers, other members of the public, their clients, they have to do mining inspections, notice inspections, et cetera. You know all this stuff. And then having a lot of friends still in the BLM and having been here for years, I know that one of the reasons we have poor retention is mental health. The employees already you're like, how are we supposed to do things even faster? Then we get in trouble when the judge says, oh, this document's no good, or the DM says, oh, this document's no good. But we had to do, and we get no overtime, we get, it's like, I'm just seeing things from the journeyman level position, as many of us with advanced degrees don't like to be referred to as journeyman. Resource specialist. I don't know what the bureaucratic terminology is out there. But anyways, but that's part of the thing. Mental health employees, when employees and staff, managers are employees too. And there's that division. And I'm good friends with some managers, believe it or not. And I have to remind them sometimes now that I'm retired, it's easier. Hey, these guys are working their butts off. And we don't see, and it seems like it's easy to forget. And I know the managers are working really, really hard too. But a lot of that time is spent in jets and cars driving around. Jets. The technology now to have video conferences is being neglected. And anyways.
Well, you said a lot there.
Yeah, I could say more.
Let me just quickly. One of the goals of the administration is trying to push more resources to the field level to help with that stuff. I don't know when that's going to happen, how that's going to happen. Given our budgets that we have, everything we're hearing, they're not going to increase. So that's a stated goal, but the implementation of that stated goal is still unknown at that point. Theoretically, if we could put more resources to the ground, we would have additional capacity or the additional ability to kind of hopefully manage that workload a little bit better. And as far as trying to meet that Secretary 3355, the 1 year and all that stuff, it's a big challenge. And I really think the next 2 years are going to be learning things for us as well as hopefully the department. When we said this is our approach, this is what we have done, and if it took over a year and it was more than 150 pages, well, some are more complex than others, and hopefully they can see that. So hopefully it'll be a learning experience, but it isn't going to happen overnight. I can guarantee you that, right? And I don't even know how to address the mental health issue, but again, I think if we can definitely manage the workloads better so that employees feel like they're not overtaxed on everything, whether it's a mining EIS at the same time they're doing a wild horse and gather, or they're trying to do a restoration project at the same time. I mean, that's what the manager's role here is, to try to prioritize that work. And I know I have conversations with all the DMs here on a regular basis where we're checking in to see how we're doing, meeting the stated goals for the year, and trying to resolve what might need to happen either at my level or the field level to try to meet some of those goals. But so there's a lot of communication trying to figure that out.
I happen to be the mayor of North Las Vegas, and we get along wonderful with our BLM office, Tim and his group.
All right.
And sometimes I wonder, is there a way that the cities could be partners with you? We sometimes have employees, we have projects that are very, very important to us that we can put some resources. Maybe we could outsource some of the work that means it can be done by somebody with the same expertise as your people have, so we can speed up the process. In North Las Vegas, we're trying to just make sure our city one day is financially as solvent as it possibly can be. So the property that's within the four corners of the city are very important. We progressively move forward with the right products on this piece of property. Is there any way we can partner with the local governments, allow maybe them to put some money in, get some of this work done, hand it back to you by people that are on an accredited list that you say, we trust them,
Right.
You hire them, that speeds your process up. I just think that's a missing link somewhat in the relationship that we have with you guys, because you are working hard, but we have assets and we have priorities sometimes that we can shift things around and help out in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer real quickly, and Tim, if you have anything you want to say that. But I would say anything that we can start thinking outside the box and how we traditionally is a good thing, right? And I think starting that conversation is the important part. And the devil's in the details. You know, how do we do that? How do we make it work? So, like I said, hey, accredited person, you know, we can, you know, make sure that's all, because we have to meet certain regulations, just as you do in your city. And that's probably the part, it's those detail pieces, how can we make it happen, right? But I do think that type of thinking is what we need to start doing a little bit, and it's going to take some time to figure it out, but it's worth having.
We would love to do a test program with you.
Pilot? Yeah? Tim?
Yeah, the one thing I'd offer is that we already have some master agreements, one with NV Energy, where they actually have people that come into our office and work on projects, and then, of course, we have to sign and we have to do the authorizing, but they at least do a lot of the prep stuff for us that really helps. We also have one with Clark County, and so there's an individual that sits right in our office, right next to all of our lands people that you know, does a lot of that work that really supports. And we also have somebody from the city of Las Vegas that also supports. And so we'd be very open to, you know, look at something else with, you know, both the city of North Las Vegas and Henderson and whomever. Yeah, we totally agree that we've got a lot of work, and we got, just in the valley itself, we get over 300 applications for lands and realty type of permits per year, so the faster we can move that's where we want to be.
Well, I do appreciate what is happening. I just realized, listening to all this, that more and more is being required, and your employees are getting burned out. Maybe we could find other additional things, Tim. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Anything else?
Yeah, just
Okay.
to streamline NEPA, it seems to me that a large cost of the process is going to get borne by the advocates, whoever's proposing it. And that's the message, I think, that goes hand in hand with a target of the BLM streamlining the process, is that when an advocate walks in the door with a proposal, they've already done the analysis to know whether it's consistent with your programmatic plan, and that costs money. And I don't know if they're really ready to bear that cost or recognize.
Yeah, and that's a good point. We've been kind of talking about that too, is, and just so folks know, when does the clock really start? It's when a notice of intent is published in a Federal Register notice. That's kind of when the one-year time frame starts. So what we're trying to do is figure out how to upfront a lot of information prior to that notice being completed, and at the same time making sure we're not making any kind of decisions that looked like it could be pre-decisional before we really got going, because then we're going to lose that, right? So we are trying to figure out how do we get a lot of information up front, as much done without being pre-decisional before that clock starts, so we don't have the clock start, and then try to get that information, trying to be upfront. And then, yes, the costs potentially could be, you know, to the project proponents a lot of times. And that's a risk, right? Because you're like saying, okay, do I spend my money on this stuff not knowing what the outcome could potentially be? These are some of the things I think we're trying to figure out. That's why I said it's not going to happen overnight real quickly. We're going to learn a lot through this process in order to try to meet those timeframes and page limits. Did you have something you want to add, Doug? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand off the corner of my eye. Or were you just kind of stretching your finger? Yeah, practicing your fingers.
So with respect to streamlining the NEPA process, this is nothing really new. In Battle Mountain, we have the largest mining program in the BLM. Dan from Newmont here can testify to that. And years ago, we developed a policy to do exactly what Raul's indicated as far as getting that upfront data collected, so that when we start the NEPA process, we have a streamlined EIS. In Battle Mountain, we did one in 13 months, start to finish. So
was it 150 pages?
Huh?
Was it 150 pages?
Not including
So you
appendices.
meant 50%. Okay.
And that's one thing. That's one thing Raul hasn't mentioned. The rules are 150 pages of text, but there's no exception on the size of the appendices. So you're still going to get a document this thick. Getting it done within 12 months is another thing. But I'm working right now with the mining companies, predominantly Barrick and Newmont, to identify a new model for how we would get an EIS for mining, but it could apply to rights of ways or other applications that result in an EIS level permitting effort, to get it done from NOI to ROD in 12 months. And I'm getting feedback from the companies right now, and my goal is to develop an action plan with buy-in from the industry to then present to my boss as an opportunity to issue new guidance, new policy guidance to comply with 3355 and actually use that not just as a means to make the secretary happy, but also to improve the efficiency of our permitting efforts. And that's sort of at a lower level right now. But in 2000, I believe in 14, BLM Nevada issued guidance on how to permit 3809 plan of operations at an EIS level. And again, it's all the pre-planning, it's all the baseline studies up front, it's all the initial coordination with the state and local government and NDOW, and then when they actually submit their plan of operations, they're submitting it with all the baselines that have been previously reviewed by BLM, and we've shown that we can get an EIS done in a very, very short period of time. So my goal is to present these options and a new path to my boss, John, and hopefully that'll influence this 3355 compliance statewide.
Thank you, Doug. You had one question?
Yeah, you mentioned with the wild horses that we're seeing population control drugs of 1 year duration. Are we using PCP 22, and is that not being effective with the second year where the capsule is supposed to activate for second year control?
Yeah, we are using 22. There's been research that 1 to 2 years is kind of the best that we can get out of that. Particularly, but in our larger herds here in Nevada, we're seeing more like at the 1 year mark than we are at the 2 year mark. Where I was working in Grand Junction, Colorado, we had a small herd there at the Book Cliffs. USGS was doing the research there. They were showing 2 years for that herd. But I mean, you can get up to them easy, the horses, and just, you know, practically dart them right there standing next to them. I think it's just a little bit more challenging with these bigger herds that we have here in Nevada. When you look at the efficacy across a bigger number, it's more like 1 year.
So we're doing PCP usually with gathers where we turn back out. Do we have any idea how many we've done in the state of Nevada? How many have we treated?
Yes, and I don't have that number on the top of my head.
Okay, that's
but
fine.
we do have it. Right. I can get that to you if you like.
Okay.
Okay, one more question. Pete.
Is there a cost to train those horses when they're sold off?
It's a minimal cost. No, but it is. We have an agreement with the Northern Nevada Correctional Facility, which will now be shifting to a contract because of some new rules. And so it's the cost to feed them, basically feed and hold the horses. The training cost is pretty minimal, right? So, and I don't know, I'm sure there's a breakdown of how much each horse costs the Bureau, you know, when we, and I don't know, I don't have that number off the top of my head. But we get them all adopted out, which is nice.
I'm sure everybody here is aware of it, and I just got to reiterate the fact that no fertility program is going to work, it's going to be effective until we get populations down to AML. That needs to be first priority.
And you can see by the sheer number of horses that we have that are over AML, I keep telling folks above me, pick your tool, whatever tool you want to get to AML, and run the numbers. It's expensive. And every year we wait, we're just adding to the cost. So whether it's adoption, whether it's a gather for removal, whether it's a gather to treat, as those numbers increase, whatever the tool that we're going to use to get to AML is going to be much more than we currently have in our budgets. I still say the best one is if we can get a tool that we can fly over the horses and they can snort it in real quick and they're treated. Because I don't know how we're going to treat that many horses. So. All right, thank you, everyone.